They had the cuff on my wrist before they'd finished arguing about the voltage. 40 millivolts won't even register, said the one with the stylish, engineered Dorn, scales the color of wet moss under the bay's flat daylight panels. We need at least 90 to provoke the suppressant. The literature is clear. The literature is 140 years of guesswork, said Director Vossktheyn, not looking up from the diagnostic slate. He was the senior one, SCARRED, along one eye ridge, the kind of reptilian green that had gone pale gray at the jaw with age. 90. Begin. Nobody asked me if I minded. I didn't say anything. I'd been at HALSEY Reach Station for 6 weeks, Class 13 intake out of Tellus, and this was the third lab that wanted to find the thing they were sure was sewn into me. The cuff warmed. A line on the slate ticked up, then plateaued, then sat there being boring. 91 resting, Dorn read off. No change. Recalibrate the instrument, VOSSK said. That was always the answer. Recalibrate the instrument, never recalibrate the assumption. The OPHIRAN Calibration Corps had built its whole division on one premise, that the DEATHWORLDER's famous flat affect under threat wasn't biology. It was hardware, a suppressant implant, dating back to some unverified war-era program that let us watch a building come down or a blade come in without our hearts so much as stuttering. 3 generations of OPHIRAN engineers had been trying to find it, remove one, study it, replicate it for their own soldiers. 3 generations had found nothing, which they took, each time, as proof the implant was simply better hidden than the last. They ran me up to 110 millivolts. My pulse moved 4 beats and came back down before Dorn finished writing the 4 down. That's pain response, not threat response, VOSSK said, dismissing it with 2 fingers. We need something the nervous system reads as a kill scenario. Pure voltage won't do it. We could use the immersion rig, said the third one. A younger OPHIRAN named SAEL, modeled paler green, junior enough to still sound hopeful about the whole project. Simulated FREFALL. That triggers genuine threat cascades in every species we've tested. They put a hood over half my face and dropped the floor out from under the chair. The rig was good vertigo, good wind noise, a convincing half-second of nothing under me before the harness caught. My stomach did what stomachs do. My heart rate climbed to 96, peaked, and was back to baseline by the time they had the hood off. 96 is nothing, VOSSK said. A faulty servo would do that to a KORRATHI infant. There has to be a mechanism, SAEL said, and I almost felt for him. He wanted there to be a chip the way a man wants there to be a reason a building stayed up after the floor below it was gone. The idea that nothing was holding it up was worse than any mechanism they could imagine. There is a mechanism, VOSSK said. We haven't found the right stimulus. They tried sound next, a frequency band their own intelligence said should hit the amygdala like a hammer in every coalition species on file. I felt it behind my eyes, a flat, unpleasant pressure, and sat through 11 minutes of it while Dorn adjusted the gain twice and SAEL kept glancing at my hands, which weren't shaking, which had never once in 6 weeks of this been the part of me that was going to give them an answer. 68 resting, Dorn said when they finally cut it. His voice had an edge now. Frustration, not malice, not yet. Recalibrate, VOSSK said again, and this time it came out tight. They moved to the injector after that. Dorn didn't like it, said so quietly to SAEL while he was loading the cartridge, a synthetic adrenal analog the Corps used to force a baseline fight-or-flight curve in subjects whose own glands wouldn't cooperate. It was meant for animals too sedate to register threat at all. VOSSK overruled him in 4 words, and the needle went into my arm without much ceremony. It burned going in, then it didn't. Then my hands went a little too aware of themselves for about 90 seconds, the particular overclarity of a body being told by chemistry that something is wrong when nothing visibly is. I let it run its course and didn't reach for the armrest. The monitor logged a 6-beat rise, and a return to baseline inside the same window Dorn needed to finish his sentence about expected onset latency. "That's not possible," he said, mostly to the readout. "That compound doesn't have a baseline return that fast in anything we've tested. Not in KORRATHI, not in VAETHARI elders. Nothing." "Recalibrate," VOSSK said, and I understood by then it wasn't an instruction anymore. It was the only word he had left that didn't require him to be wrong. I watched him through the second hour the way you watch someone slowly arrive somewhere you got to a while ago. He'd built a career on the implant theory. He had 2 published papers citing the absence of evidence as evidence of sophistication. Every test that came back clean wasn't disproving his thesis to him. It was proving the chip's design was better than he'd estimated. There's a kind of mind that can survive on that logic indefinitely. I'd met it before. It usually breaks all at once, not gradually. By the third hour, they stopped pretending this was diagnostic and started treating it as a contest. "Bring in the specimen," VOSSK said. SAEL Quotes' head came up. "Director, that's a live threat protocol. We don't have authorization for." "We have a research mandate and a subject who isn't producing data," VOSSK said. "Controlled exposure. Handler leashed. I want a genuine kill scenario reading before this rotation ends." They brought it in on a tether held by a handler in heavy gloves, something low and fast-built, claw-forward, bred, or engineered for exactly this kind of provocation work. The kind of animal whose entire design is a threat display with a body attached. It hit the end of the tether twice before they'd even got the door shut, mouth working, a sound coming out of it that was meant to put something primal through the floor. I was still sitting in the chair with the leads on. Nobody had told me to move. "Closer," VOSSK said, 2 meters. The handler walked it closer. My pulse monitor sat at 71. It stayed at 71. "1 meter," VOSSK said, and something in his voice had gone thin and bright, the sound of a man watching his entire framework either confirm itself or end. The handler's grip on the tether wasn't as good as he thought it was. I'd clocked that on the way in, the leash hand too high, the wrist locked instead of loose, the kind of hold that looks secure right up until the animal decides to test it. It decided at 1 meter. The tether went. The handler went with it half a step off balance, and the thing came the rest of the way on its own. I caught it by the jaw before it finished the leap. Not hard. Just there, my hand where its mouth was going to be, and then a turn of my wrist that put its own weight against the joint that didn't want to go that way. It made a sound, short and surprised, and went still against the floor with my knee at the base of its skull, not pinning hard enough to hurt it, just hard enough that it understood the conversation was over. The whole thing took less time than it had taken Dorn to recalibrate his instrument the first time. I let it up when the handler had the tether back. It went and stood by his leg, subdued, looking at me the way animals look at something they've recalculated. The monitor on my wrist still read 71. It had never moved. Nobody spoke for a while. Sale was the one who finally looked at the slate, at the flat, unbroken line across 3 hours and 1 live engagement, and said quietly, like he was trying the words out before he believed them, "There's nothing there." "Recalibrate the instrument," Vosk said, but it came out smaller this time, a man saying the only sentence he had left. "The instrument's fine," I said. It was the first thing I'd said in 3 hours. "You're not going to find a chip. There isn't one. This is just what it looks like when nothing's wrong." He didn't answer that. He stood there a long moment looking at the slate like it had personally betrayed him, and then he told Dorn to log the session and left without finishing the sentence he'd started. The report that went up the chain that week had a line in it nobody on the calibration core wanted to write, in Sale's handwriting because Vosk wouldn't. "No implant detected across full diagnostic and live threat protocol." Recommend reclassification of baseline Deathworlder affect as innate. They unhooked the leads. I rubbed the spot on my wrist where the cuff had sat, took the ration bar out of my jacket pocket, and ate it on the walk back to the barracks, because by then it was well past lunch and nobody had thought to ask if I was hungry.